Hey, Mike, your promotion of this thing has been second to none. You mentioned the infamous commercial that blew you up, but how'd you end up with like those classic blue satin PJs?
That you the shirt, you mean?
Or, okay, maybe it's just the shirt.
Let me tell you, they did a poll at the Minnesota State Fair. They found out of the top 5 things you recognize of Mike Lindell in a commercial. Number 1 was
mustache.
Mike Cross.
Mustache.
Number two was the mustache.
Yes.
Number 3 was the voice. Number 4 was the blue shirt, and number 5 was how I hold the pillow. Now that blue shirt, that blue shirt actually came from. I bought it years ago. There's another company. I'm not going to name their name, but they did a study on what colors work in trade shows and home shows for different products. And about that same time and space, I had went out and bought a blue shirt with that color, a short sleeve one, and then I found out it matched what they were a bedding company, and they also had done a study that color actually works in that industry. And I thought, well, it just kind of confirms what I've already been doing using that color. And now I probably have 50 of those shirts hanging around.
You really are the Ken Bone of pillow sales, because Ken Bone has to be seen in his red sweater. I don't think you could make another commercial without that blue shirt.
I agree.
I did. We tried it once on a shopping channel, and the people called in, and they were very upset.
Criminal,
It would be like if I shaved my mustache.
I was
or didn't
about
wear
to
my
say
cross.
that. The mustache is so important. This might be a Samson
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
You'd have
Don't risk
there
it.
would be a little revolt there.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating too when you think of your story. Going back to your rough beginnings with the crack cocaine problem. So many people would try to bury that story in shame. They wouldn't want it to be out there. It's something you would hope would stay silent. But we learned early on, you really own that story. What made you decide, here you've got this business and people don't trust, junkies. So what made you decide, like, hey, you know what, this is my story, I'm going to own it?
Well, I think it's hard to find people that are that public with it and that will not worry about the backlash. And you're right. I get stories all the time going, oh, he's back on drugs. He did crack for Christmas. And especially during this attack, since I got a little political.
Sure.
And, when I quit everything, it took a long time. Obviously, first the dealers trusted me, and it took a long time to build trust. And, I guess I've never even thought of the alternative. I guess I'm not built that way. I'm so transparent that if it would have hurt my company, I would have done it anyway. And I don't know any other way. I'm not built that way. I guess that's kind of my answer.
Well, going back to the 19-day run you had, and I think you've downplayed that to like 14 days because 19-day bender where you didn't sleep sounds so incredible. I've never heard of anything like it. I mean, do you have any recollection of what that was like to be in the middle of?
Well, it wasn't, it was just a little longer than other ones. There was many times it'd be 8 to 10 days. And, and that's pretty, and that's, you guys got to realize that's in the crack cocaine and in meth, methamphetamines and those two things where you are staying up, you'd hear stories all the time, people being up 5, 10 days and 12 days. And it just sounds so crazy to someone that's never been in that drug world. But when you stretched out to, 19, I actually argued with the dealers going, what do you mean it was only 14? It's only been 14. They're going, I've been with you every day. No, you've been to my house and it just, the reason I tried to minimize it was because it just sounds too exaggerated to the common person out there.
Yeah.
So I didn't, when I write my book, I'm going to just put for days, and it's like almost like living inside of a movie, during that time. It was like the day just becomes one big long day. You get tired, not tired, and
it almost reminds me of James Fry. Remember James Fry, the guy that wrote A Million Little Pieces, that was debunked later. He went on Oprah and his sales blew up, and he had some unbelievable drug stories that were debunked. But it almost sounds like that, like I don't know how you would do that without being hallucinating like crazy. And you know what I mean?
Right. And see, the guy that wrote The Million Little Pieces, I read that book, and if you're a drug user, you read that and you go, this isn't true, because there's certain things like where he said he was throwing up, and well, that certain drug he was on, you don't throw up on. I mean, there's just different things that were in there that if you're a user, you're going, well, this guy obviously made this up. What is he? I've spent a lot of time in jail and stuff and in treatment centers, and just some of the stuff we recognized right away as addicts that weren't true. With my book, what I've done is I've kind of been blessed. I've saved evidence over the years of different things, near-death experiences, and all these things that happened to me, actual newspaper articles or anything that's happened, so that every little thing has been proven. So you've got proof of all these little things that happened, or all these big things that happened throughout the book, and you're going, wow. Because some of them are so hard to believe, and I'm actually going to have a website where you can go to say, oh, wow, this really happened, and here's the witnesses that it did happen.
So when you talk about near-death experiences, what do you mean? What almost happened to you? I think I read something in the Forbes article.
Here's an example. When I was 17, I got 11 traffic tickets in 2 days outrunning the cops, and I was going skydiving in a place here in Minnesota, and it was my ninth jump, and it was pulled from the plane. Well, I fell asleep on my motorcycle. I was working 2 jobs at a drive-in theater and a grocery store, and I fell asleep on my motorcycle and crashed it. I actually picked myself up off the highway. I fell perfect into the ditch, and I got on that, and I'm all banged up and bloody, but I wanted to get this static line jump done so I could free fall the next time. And I got down there, and here I had a malfunction with my parachute, and they figure I hit the ground maybe 50, 60 miles an hour. But I was so worried that the cops were coming, and I was able to get back up all banged up and get on my bike before the cops and the ambulance got there. And I said, I'm leaving. You guys can't keep me here. And my bike's all banged up, and I'm all bloodied and broken up. And I had an hour drive back. Home, and I said, God, if you get me home, I'm never going to ride a motorcycle or jump out of a perfectly good airplane again, and I never have since that day.
That's incredible. I want to you breezed past this, but how do you get stopped for 11 times in 2 days by the cops for outrunning them?
Well, if you outrun them, the first day. I think it was 17 tickets. It was 11 one day and 6 the next. The 11 tickets, going through a 4-way semaphore, failing to yield to an emergency vehicle. They just listed off all the tickets, and I didn't get a lawyer or plea bargain. So, and the very next day I didn't have a motorcycle endorsement. So I tried, when you turn 18, you get an automatic license back then in the 70s. So I outran the cops both days, and then I got caught both the second day, and they stopped. It was 17 tickets, and I pled guilty to every one of them before the judge, and all you heard was a voice in the back of the courtroom go, "Boy, is he in trouble," or something like that. So I can't use the words on the radio. My mother actually went to that courtroom, and I said, "Mom, now whatever you do, you tell him, I want to be tried. I don't want to be tried as an adult." And anyway, we practiced this all the way there, and she gets in the courtroom, and she stands up. She says, "Your Honor, I am tired of Mike always getting off easy. I want him tried as an adult," and blah, blah, blah. And I look at her and go, "This isn't what we practiced at all. This is..."
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But I had other near death. I've been trapped under the ice where I couldn't find the hole to get back up.
What?
I've been burned burned in a fire. And electrocuted. I blew up a whole town without taking a air conditioner off a roof. I hit the guide wires, and the whole town blew up. And they go, "Look, the crane's on fire." And they go, "No, look, Mike's on fire." And nothing happened to me, and they still can't explain it at the electric company how I lived, but it blew up the whole town.
It was divine intervention.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's the only way they could explain it, because I had this big calling later on.
What happened when you got stuck under the ice? I'm assuming you were ice fishing in Minnesota.
No, I was actually duck hunting in Minnesota, and it was over Thanksgiving in 1978. And it was, I snuck up on these ducks and fell through the ice and went under the ice and couldn't get my head up through the ice. And you can't push your gun up through it because there's no pressure underwater to get enough pressure. And I fell in the bottom of the lake, and then I finally bashed my head up through the ice, and I collected up my ducks I had gotten, and I stuck them in my hunting coat, and I had a quarter-mile walk in a blizzard back to my truck, and the ducks' warmth actually saved my life, because I passed out in the snow and on top of the ducks, and it was pretty crazy. I was frozen solid.
That's kind of like putting a tauntaun almost, you know.
My intentions were just to go back to my Thanksgiving with my family and go, look I got all these ducks, and that was very amazing that they warmed me up enough where I could get to my truck and actually opened up the car. I could barely turn the key because my hands were froze solid.
This is going to be an incredible book, and I thought I read that you were. I know you're friends with Stephen Baldwin.
Yep.
And he's an interesting guy. I've met him once. He was back at I don't think he was born again at the time when I met him.
Right.
But are you talking about doing some sort of movie with him about your life?
Yeah, we're best friends now. And we just finished our first movie. I told him, I said, Stephen, I said this a couple years ago. I said, I got a book coming out that's going to change the world, and I said I really want to make some movies from it. I want to learn the industry. Can I come to one of your sets? And he says, brother, I'll do you one better. Let's make some movies together so you can learn the industry. And our first movie is called Youth Group. It's coming out this spring, and it's done. I've watched it. It's awesome. I have a cameo in it, and it's a Christian comedy. It's never been done before. And then we have another one we're making called Felonies, and then after that we're going to be doing the 2 or 3 movies from my book, because there's so much material. I used to bet on football, so I had the mafia always trying to kill me, and because I didn't pay. And then I had trips to Mexico where the cartel was going to cut my head off on a family vacation. That was not a good day.
I would say. Wait, how did you get mixed up with the cartel then? What happened? You wouldn't pay them?
No, I was buying drugs down there, and I got involved with if there's such a thing as a bad cartel, and they. To make a long story short, they go to cut my head off, and I grabbed his sword. I said, I'm not buying this sword, and I'm flipping out. And I said, and the guy goes, see, he comes up, he says, Senor, he doesn't want to sell you a sword. He wants to cut off your head. And I'm going, and I'm going, well, my wife's really going to be upset about this. I've learned that, when you're inside, I've been in such bad settings, and with instinct, I've learned to say stuff that just totally surprises the people you would not normally say. And plus, I didn't have any fear. I've always felt very protected, and I think that very much surprised them. But that's just one of the stories in the book.
So what happens when a cartel member wants to cut your head off, and you deliver a funny line at him, and it disarms the moment?
Yeah,
but
he lets
then
you
what
walk
happens?
away. How do you get away?
Well, then I actually had to talk my way out. They thought I was some kind of a police person or something.
Oh, the mustache.
And I had to do a lot of fast talking, and they thought I had to basically show that, hey, I'm just a tourist on vacation, and I'm looking for some drugs here. Not I could care less what you guys have going on between you two.
I don't know how you're going to make this, because I thought you and Steven were talking about making these like Christian movies, which are historically very, very cheesy and typically bad. So I don't know how you're going to do that and include a lot of this stuff.
Well, the movies we're making have Christian messages, and that Christian comedy we made, I can't stand. That's one of the things I told Stephen. I said, I don't want to have a budget like with Christian movies. They are made cheesy. Yeah. They're horrible, and then you have non-Christians even making movies because they sell them to as Christian movies, and they just make them cheesy, and they run them through every once in a while you get one that makes it in the secular market that it's good, but I just wanted to have a great quality movies, and I told Stephen, if we make these movies where they're the best quality and the first one youth group, I actually watched it, and now I can put all my passion behind that because it's a really good movie, and it's even and then if you add the fact that it's a Christian movie, that even brings it to another level because they're usually so bad. And the movies that are made for my book, I mean, obviously you're going to have it's going to be a big crossover into the secular market, but the message there, the message of hope and the messages that are within that book for transformation and hope and everything else are going to be amazing.
Yeah, I think you're dealing with the right guy in Steven. I mean, Biodome and all, so that's good.
By the way, real quick, who's going to play Mike Lindell? I mean, if you had your first choice.
Well, Steven thinks he is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I go. I don't know if that's going to work, but we've hung around so much together that he thinks he knows all my little idiosyncrasies and quirks and all my Mike-isms. But
is he going to be able to? Is he going to be able to grow a suitable stash though?
I don't know.
Yeah, I worry about that.
Or do the voice.
I think,
he's got to be able to do the voice. Yes.
Yeah, I think I've had so many suggestions, and the list goes on and on. But we'll have to see when the time comes. But I'm actually trying to get through my book. My ghostwriter is helping me. That I've thousands of hours of transcript and stories, and it's like what to leave in, what to leave out. And he keeps telling me, he goes, Mike, you just have to end because it just keeps getting bigger, the book, because you can't even make this up. It's like living inside of a movie where all of a sudden every day something happens to me that doesn't happen to the person, the normal people that would,
all of a sudden you're in a bullfight, and he's like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, exactly. It's out of the blue. Here I'm running around at the inauguration and meeting the president of the United States, and that's that just doesn't happen to ex-crack addicts,
Yeah, it's been an incredible life, Mike, and certainly we'll be interested in reading the book. Hey, before we let you go, and we do appreciate your time, I want to shamelessly ask you, we're doing a fundraiser coming up for a local shelter here.
South Oakland Shelter.
Oakland Shelter, and we're going to be doing a week-long fundraiser. How's about donating a few My Pillows to the situation?
Oh, we'll do you better than that. We'll get you covered with a lot of My Pillows and some money to go towards it.
Wow,
awesome!
That would be amazing. Yeah, this is our first dipping our toes into the water of charity work, and so we really want to kind of do something special. That's really cool, man. We'd love to team up with you a little bit on something like that. I know the shelter would appreciate it.
You tell me what you need, and then we'll triple it, and we'll call it a day.
Wow.
$1 million and 1 million pillows.
$1,286,000, and that's all I need.